Okay, guys, hear me out. I know this is kind of crazy, but I think All For One is a bad guy. I mean, we always thought he was like a really good, father figure to Shigaraki, but clearly that is... Okay, I can't keep a straight face long enough for that. But, bad jokes aside, this is a very good and informative chapter of My Hero Academia for various reasons, honestly. But one of the biggest reasons is kind of finding out how quirks actually work. For a very long time now, we've always known about the singularity, we've known about the quirk factor, we've known about these vestiges within, One For All, and now we come to find out that these vestiges, or the, I guess the remnants of these certain quirks, actually live on in every single quirk. So example, when All For One snatches a quirk from somebody, he actually is taking their very essence itself, and the memories from those cells, from the quirk factor, transfer into him, which basically means that he's actually able to see potentially vestiges of those individuals. So imagine this, okay? We know how ridiculous it's gotten for, Izuku, kind of handling all these different vestiges for, One For All. He's seeing all the previous users. But imagine All For One. He literally probably sees hundreds upon hundreds of individuals within his mind constantly of the quirks he's actually stolen from individuals. And obviously, these quirks that he has stolen, these individuals are not going to probably treat him very kindly. Most of them are probably going to be very mean towards him because of just, he forcefully snatched these quirks away from these individuals. So it's very fascinating to find out about this, that all of these characters throughout this series are kind of in a very similar situation as One For All and All For One. It's just these two individuals are in a very unique circumstance. They have progress their quirks to a certain elevation to where they're actually able to see their vestiges, but technically every single quirk is kind of capable of this to a certain extent, depending on how they actually fundamentally work deep down. It's kind of interesting. I do like finding out this information about quirks, and kind of every single individual person could theoretically be passed on through generations if they just somehow manage to give up their quirk to another individual. For instance, All For One. It's cool information, but there is a few things that do need to be discussed. One of the big ones I do want to mention is the fact that how this chapter tried to paint Izuku's rage and his irrational, times that he's constantly put himself in harm's way of damaging his body, how it's a good thing. I don't know how many noticed that, but this chapter, the ending of this chapter, One For All, the original one, he tried to actually paint Izuku in a good light, like he's doing a good job, like he is having this, unexplainable rage and the ability to save people, etc. You can't comprehend him whatsoever, but he's like, we support him fully. The way it tries to paint Izuku is like everything he's done up to this point is a-okay. Him shattering his arms and body up against any opponent he fights is a-okay, and I find this very jarring, especially when we look at the previous chapters and way Horikoshi has kind of painted these chapters with its storytelling. He's kind of painted that Izuku is damaged himself beyond repair. Once this fight is said and done, Izuku's arms are gone. They're straight up gone. He's not going to be able to use his arms to fight again unless, once again, regenerative quirk or something, or Eri, etc. But that's the point, is that Izuku has faced major repercussions thanks to this. And these latest chapters have tried to say that Izuku has went beyond his very limit and he can't really ever recover from the damages he's now gotten. That is something that the series has also been painting for a very long time. It's been painting that Izuku needs to care more about himself. He needs to care about his individuality instead of worrying about, just others and not caring about himself. If he's going to care about others, he needs to care about himself. But then you have One For All come in and it's like, you're doing a good job. Keep breaking your body up against that wall. You're a good man. You're a good hero. We fully support you. And it's just like, wait, what? Like, I don't know, just the way that is done, I feel like that's obviously intentional by Horikoshi. It's definitely intentional. 100% it's intentional. But it now makes me look at One For All in a very weird way. I look at it as not an entity that is 100% good. And that's kind of the main subject I want to get into when it comes to this video. And that is talking about One For All and All For One. And kind of how we get to see how these different quirks represent each other in this, weird ethereal state, these avatar-like states, we get to see how they interact, kind of the fundamentals of how these quirks really do work deep down within their bodies. So let's look at, obviously, One for All. When we look at One for All, on the surface, everything seems to be a-okay. You have the previous users all in support of Izuku saying, we're going to support him, we're going to give him our power, we're here with him, we're happy that he was chosen, All Might did a good job, etc, etc. Basically saying, Izuku, you are the right person to inherit this quirk. And so this is something that obviously Izuku has wanted to hear for a very long time. He's always had this imposter syndrome. He's always felt like he was inferior to All Might. He always felt like, someone else could have potentially have gotten it. For instance, Toga. He always felt like he wasn't potentially worthy of One for All. That was the whole point of Night Eye and Izuku for a very long time. And Izuku was always looking for acceptance, being able to accept the fact that, maybe he deserves to have One for All and that he was the right person for it. And this is something that he's slowly tried to overcome, but directly hearing it from One for All itself, basically saying you're the right person for the job, is definitely going to inspire Izuku to be like, I'm doing a good job, this quirk has accepted me for this role, this duty, I am destined to be able to stop All for One. That's definitely going to build up Izuku's ego in a very good way. However, there is some negatives because of this. Like I said, on the surface, everything looks good. But we gotta look at something real quick. Once again, if we look at the fundamentals of One for All and what it tries to represent, it tries to represent that one person represents the entire group. For instance, everybody's ideals, even though they have their own individual ideals, they all lined up to the fundamental theme, and that is basically stopping All for One, getting him completely defeated. Like, he will never be able to continue to terrorize anyone ever again. That's kind of like one of the main objectives of One for All. Obviously, it's to save people and stop evil, but it's mainly kind of there to stop All for One. And you can see kind of how everybody was backing Izuku, Nana, and, the original One for All user, backing him and saying he was the right choice and decision, and they were lending him their power. Basically, the quirk represents that everybody's for the group. And the individual technically matters, but not fully. It's mainly about what the group is trying to accomplish together. That has always been the fundamentals of what One for All is. It's stockpiling power, and generation after generation of building up the power of that quirk to the point where it's currently at right now. So it's never been about technically the full-on individual. The full ideals of every individual user doesn't necessarily matter in comparison to the grand scheme of things when it comes to taking down All for One. That's usually kind of what it's been presented as. When you really look at this chapter, it also paints that picture. And now we see something from All for One that kind of clarifies that even though he is not a good guy by any means, and he is definitely not something that you want to have attached in your mind, have his quirk in you, it doesn't change the fact that when we look at what his quirk represents, it represents the individual. It represents basically your own choices, your own ideals, and his dispute and fighting over the body with Shigaraki is a perfect representation of that. It's him fighting for his ideals, him fighting for control, him fighting for what he wants as his person, All for One. And that's why, Shigaraki is the perfect candidate. He is someone that is also actively fighting for his goals. He's struggling with his master, the original All for One user, to get what he wants, to be able to fight for a better world that he wants and all that. He is fighting for that. So he is in a constant mind battle with his original teacher, his father, technically. And that shows the differences between One for All and All for One, as One for All, once again, is a group effort. They all kind of put aside what they technically want for what the group wants, while All for One represents them constantly bickering for what they actually want, their own ideal, what they're fighting for. And so you could see that Shigaraki is definitely, once again, a perfect candidate to fall in line after the original All for One user, is because he wants to fight for his goal. He won't bow down to his master and allow him to have what he wants. He is the perfect candidate to actually maintain that quirk. Now, this gets into a little bit more fundamentals. Once again, I know that All for One is definitely a quirk that's kind of evil in nature and very malicious when you think about how he's kind of like this cancerous tumor that is coming out of Shigaraki and strangling him and all that, strangling the life, trying to kind of take over his body. You also have to look at it like this. you have to look at it as if, Shigaraki, he has been given this quirk because his master wanted him to have it. All for One's like, it's all for you. And what he means is that everything I've done up to this point, everything when it comes to me giving you my quirk, etc., it's all for you. It's not for me, which represents the mentality of All for One. It's for his ideal, but also Shigaraki's ideal as well. So I think the only reason why you have this entire dispute between the two is because Shigaraki is actually able to fight back against his master. I don't think he would ever respect anyone or even give his quirk to someone that couldn't actually fight for what they believe in. So I think in the end, he's very pleased and happy with his student that he's been teaching for a very long time. So like I said, when we look at the fundamentals between the quirks, I don't really like One for All that much because it's like you sacrifice your individuality for the sake of the group. And in some circumstances, that is good, depending. But at the same time, you lose a lot of things doing that. Like, let's look at Nana. Nana is a good example. She lost what could have been a good family thanks to trying to take down All for One. It's what caused Shigaraki to be in his current circumstance. It's so many things that's happened thanks to Nana's decision that she made in the past, and it's thanks to kind of the core of what One for All actually represents is why she made that decision in the first place. And then we have to look at, Izuku. He's now sacrificing his arms, his very health and well-being, just to be able to stand up and take down Shigaraki. All Might is another good example. He sacrificed his very being as a hero to be the symbol of peace just to be able to take down All for One. As you can see, it might be very subtle, but One for All has slowly been ripping away the very fundamentals of what makes these individuals. It makes them just clearly focused entirely on All for One. Which, by the way, I do want to point something out. If anyone didn't notice, Shigaraki's design looks exactly like the original user of One for All. They're literally the exact same character. The design, hairstyle, everything is the exact same. The only core differences between the two is that the little brother of All for One looks like he's healthy. He doesn't look as shriveled up, and he has good facial care and all that, like he's getting moisturized. He looks good. Shigaraki obviously looks like he needs to put on some lipstick and chapstick, etc. Like he needs to have some facial treatment. But the point is that they look exactly alike, and it does make me wonder the reason why All for One eventually discovered Shigaraki was probably because he has little brother syndrome. Like, he really loves his little brother. He's attached to him to such a certain extent. We know this. I mean, he's full-on love for his brother. He's like, little brother and all that. It makes me wonder if he chose Shigaraki because of the way he looks. Or maybe he didn't at first, but as he continued to be around Shigaraki, he realized that he looked exactly like his brother, and maybe he grew very attached and bonded to him. It's a variety of things, but I find it very interesting that they actually look exactly alike. It's kind of strange, honestly. So, backing up for a second, let's actually talk about the taking of One for All. So, obviously, Shigaraki wasn't actually capable of doing it. However, he would potentially be capable of taking it depending on the will of Izuku, but also depending on the sheer might and power of All for One. See, All for One realized that it wasn't possible for him to take One for All from the user, because there's so many of them in one, so many of the different individuals kind of fighting back, that just one individual can't pull that quirk away. There's just too much resistance. But if he had another person in place to be able to be there to fight against that quirk's power and will, he might be able to take it away. For instance, we cue in Shigaraki. Shigaraki and All for One kind of are mixing their very mights together to be able to try to rip the quirk away from Izuku. Obviously, it wasn't enough yet, because Shigaraki hasn't fully been able to incorporate All for One into his body. 75% complete, as we know. But if he theoretically was, he most likely would have been able to overpower Izuku in that moment and snatch the quirk. But because he wasn't ready, he couldn't do it. The wills of them are just way too strong for him to be able to compete. And I find it very interesting that All for One is actually kind of became a little bit more like One for All. He's now looking at it as a group effort instead of just a single individual as well, trying to work together. He's willing to work with another individual to actually take down One for All, rip the quirk away. very interesting. I don't know, I like the way this chapter kind of paints the two Quirks in their own respective lights, but they mix it a little bit to where it's kind of a gray area with both Quirks. Like, I don't think they're fully 100% evil and 100% good as well. They're just very distinct, and they kind of call upon the ego of the original users of these said Quirks. Let's talk about the whole situation with Toga at the end. I find this something that is going to catch many by surprise, honestly, especially after such a crazy chapter with all this information we got. Toga, she starts to think to herself, she's like, if heroes are supposed to save people, then why was Jin killed by a hero? Why did Twice have to die? Does that mean that he was less than a person? And we gotta look at this from Toga's perspective, okay? She is definitely a serial killer. She is definitely not a good person by any means, and the previous arcs has definitely made it very clear that she is, in some cases, very irredeemable to a certain extent. However, there is a shed of light to some of this darkness within her when she starts to talk about how heroes view villains, or how they view outcasts like themselves. She starts to look at Twice as herself. She's like, if Twice was someone that was technically less than human and had to be exterminated, does other heroes think the same way about me? Does Ochako and does Izuku want me to die? Do they want me to be completely dead and they don't think of me even as a human being? Am I such a lesser being to them? And we know the full extent of why Twice technically needed to die. The point is that Toga is in a very unique circumstance. She's now understanding the weight of life, but also what does it really mean to be a hero, what does it really mean to be a villain, etc. And she's wondering if, Ochako and Izuku would actually do the very thing that, Hawks did to Twice, or would they actually try to save her no matter what? She is very curious about this, and so she is seeking answers. She's seeking answers to see that if she is really viewed as less than human or not, because she's always been someone that is an outcast, but this is the first time that she's noticed that someone she cares about's life has been taken. Talking about the memory ordeal with individual Quirks, etc., I do wonder how that works with Toga, because we do know that Toga takes people's Quirks. She can actually use Quirks of other individuals, and if that's actually the case, I wonder if the memories of those individuals actually are inside of her as well. It kind of fit her theme, honestly, of changing into other people, and I wonder if something like that, especially after the information we just found out about, Quirks in general, Quirk Factor, I wonder if that's going to play any part with Toga as well, because of just how her quirk works, how it actually, she can use other quirks and takes, their appearance. I wonder if she might have, multi-personality. She might start to fragment in her mind because she's actually dealing with multiple people at once, or whoever she changes into, she's actually dealing with them as a person. Maybe it might allow her to understand different viewpoints. It'd be a very unique way to kind of handle her character. So, I know everybody's probably hyped up about this one, because let's be honest with each other, Dabi has been built up for hundreds of chapters now, like 100, 200 chapters now. It's been a long time. Honestly, at this point, I think Horikoshi's kind of dragged it on long enough with the whole Dabi thing. I mean, I'm gonna be real. I care, but I don't care as much as I used to, because if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's been dragged for so long with Dabi. I'm just like, just do it already. Just reveal the information already. We know that you're connected in some way to Hawks, thanks to the whole conversation he had. We know he's potentially connected with the Todorokis because of everything that we found out about Endeavor's child and all that, and then, seeing how he's continuously had this connection with Todoroki, but also Endeavor. It's very clear that Dabi is connected in some way, and I'm just waiting for the reveal. And obviously, because of what just happened at the end of the chapter, I'm saying, get ready, we're going to break this hero society and all that, expose it, it's about to happen. Most likely, there's about to be a family reunion. He's going to encounter Todoroki. He's probably going to hurt him real bad, and it's also going to be Endeavor as well, and it's going to be live since, Skeptic's there. He's able to kind of do his little hacking and stuff. Most likely, he's going to be able to broadcast it to everyone about what is actually going down, and Endeavor, what kind of horrific things he's done, etc. I definitely see that. I definitely do see, Dabi coming in and doing what many of us feared for a very long time. Endeavor finally getting exposed, and he'll finally break the camel's already broken back. But I think that's pretty much about it, though. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.